want to snap and call it and think that they're Jesus. Isn't that weird? No one ever snaps and thinks they're Buddha. Isn't that weird when more people in America resemble Buddha than Jesus too? I'm Buddha. You're Bubba. I'm Buddha now. All we gotta do is change 2 letters on my bill. Buddha. Come here and read my new script. You're Bubba. I'm Buddha now. I'm Buddha now. Ladies and gentlemen, I have some very shocking news for you. I have seen footage that you probably have never seen, some of you now, that's never aired on network television, footage of the Bradley tank shooting fire into the compound. The Branch Davidians did not start the fire. They were murdered in cold blood by the pussies, the liars, the scumbags, the ATF. And the meaning of it all, the reason you didn't see it, the reason they say that the Branch Davidians started the fire, no they didn't. They know now that Dave Branch is trying to finish that fucking whatever 7 SEAL horseshit he was doing. They know that. They burn these fucking people alive because the message they want to convey to you is state power will always win. We'll paint you as a child molester, and we'll paint you as a methamphetamine manufacturer. We'll say any lie we want over our propaganda machine, the mainstream media, and we'll burn you and your children in your fucking home. So you just be apathetic, America. You stay docile, and don't you ever forget, you're free to do what we tell you. No one ever snaps and thinks they're Buddha. Isn't that weird when more people in America resemble Buddha than Jesus too? I'm Buddha. You're Bubba. I'm Buddha now. 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 I'm Buddha now. Any lie we want over our propaganda machine, the mainstream media, and we'll burn you and your children in your fucking home. So you just be apathetic, America. You stay docile, and don't you ever forget, you're free to do what we tell you.
Is there never to be any age of happiness? Is there never to be any rest? Rest enough for the individual. Too much, too soon. We call it death. But for man, no rest and no ending. He must go on, conquest beyond conquest. First this little planet, its winds and waves, and then all the laws of mind and matter that restrain it. Then the planets about him, and at last, out across immensity to the stars. And when he has conquered all the deeps of space and all the mysteries of time, still he will
of man?
I think so. From us all, hobbits are the closest to men, the most human. And one day they will be as men are. Look you. Frodo is a bit larger than Bilbo, just as you are larger than Frodo. And younger still than you, and larger, are Merry and Pippin. And if you keep the Book of the Hobbits as Frodo asked, ages from now, when your stories are still told, there'll be those humans who might well wonder, is there Hobbit in me? Is there?
As everybody here knows, everything, culturally, educationally, economically, politically, socially, has been very gravely retarded for at least a quarter of a century. Excuse me, at least half a century and maybe more since partition. And before that, this partition is both the outcome and the cause of sectarian warfare in this town, by the simple fact that there are people there who are willing to kill not just one another, but one another's children, on the basis of what kind of Christians they are. Horrible things are done, not just in pubs and clubs, but on the streets, on housing estates, on university campuses, in that city still, despite the relatively good news we've had today, where the situation remains dominated by barbaric sectarian conflict. On this and no other basis. Both churches demanded their children are sent to separate schools. They each agree with the other that above all things, their own children must be protected from the fate of another faith. I don't think I need to elaborate very much more on how horrendous the consequences of that have been and how they are enshrined, by the way, in our own constitution, which mandates that our own Protestant church is not the head of the state,
Brainwashing. A synthesis of the Russian textbook on psychopolitics. Psychopolitics. The art and science of asserting and maintaining dominion over the thoughts and loyalties of individuals, officers, bureaus, and masses, and effecting of the conquest of enemy nations through mental healing. American students at the Lenin University, I welcome your attendance at these classes on psychopolitics. Psychopolitics is an important, if less known, division of geopolitics. It is less known because it must necessarily deal with highly educated personnel, the very top strata of mental healing. By psychopolitics, our chief goals are effectively carried forward. To produce a maximum of chaos in the culture of the enemy is our first, most important step. Our foods are grown in chaos, distrust, economic depression, and scientific turmoil. At least a weary populace can seek peace only in our offered communist state. At last, only communism can resolve the problems of the masses. A psychopolitician must work hard to produce the maximum chaos in the fields of mental healing. He must recruit and use all of the agencies and facilities of mental healing. He must labor to increase the personnel and facilities of mental healing until at last the entire field of mental science is entirely dominated by communist principles and desires. To achieve these goals, the psychopolitician must crush every homegrown variety of mental healing in America. Actual teachings of James, Eddie, and Pentecostal Bible faith healers amongst your misguided people must be swept aside. They must be discredited, defamed, arrested, stamped upon even by their own government, until there is no credit in them, and only communist-oriented healing remains. We must work until every teacher of psychology unknowingly or knowingly teaches only communist doctrine under the guise of psychology. We must labor until every doctor and psychiatrist is either a psychopolitician or an unwitting assistant to our aims. We must labor until we have dominion over the minds and bodies of every important person in your nation. We must achieve such disrepute for the state of insanity and such authority over its pronouncement that not one statesman so labeled could again be given credence by his people. We must work until suicide arising from mental imbalance is common and calls forth no general investigation or remark. With the institutions for the insane you have in your country, prisons which can hold 1 million persons and can hold them without civil rights or any hope of freedom. And upon these people can be practiced shock and surgery, so that never again will they draw a sane breath. You must make these treatments common and accepted, and you must sweep aside any treatment or any group of persons seeking to treat by effective means. You must dominate as respected men in the fields of psychiatry and psychology. You must dominate the hospitals and universities. You must carry forward the myth that only a European doctor is competent in the field of insanity, and thus excuse amongst you the high incidence of foreign birth and training. Even when we seize Vienna, you shall have then a common ground of meeting, and come and take your instructions as worshippers of Freud and along with other psychiatrists. Psychopolitics is a solemn charge. With it you can erase our enemies. With it you can erase our enemies as insects. You can cripple the efficiency of leaders by striking insanity into their families through the use of drugs. You can wipe them away with testimony as to their insanity. By our technologies, you can even bring about insanity itself when they seem too resistive. You can change their loyalties by psychopolitics. Given a short time with a psychopolitician, you can alter forever the loyalty of a soldier in our hands, or a statesman or a leader in his own country, or you can destroy his mind. However, you labor under certain dangers. It may happen that remedies for our treatments may be discovered. It may occur that a public hue and cry may arise against mental healing. It may thus occur that all mental healing might be placed in the hands of ministers, and be taken out of the hands of our psychologists and psychiatrists. But the capitalistic thirst for control, capitalistic inhumanity, and a general public terror of insanity can be brought to guard against these things. But should they occur, should independent researchers actually discover means to undo psychopolitical procedures, you must not rest. You must not eat or sleep. You must not stint one tiniest bit of available money to campaign against it, discredit it, strike it down and render it void. For by an effective means all our actions and researches could be undone. In a capitalist state you are aided on all sides by the corruption of the philosophy of man and the times. You will discover that everything will aid you in your campaign to seize, control, and use all mental healing to spread our doctrine and rid us of our enemies within their own borders. Use the courts, use the judges, use the constitution of the country, use its medical societies and its laws to further our ends. Do not stint in your labor in this direction. And when you have succeeded, you will discover that you can now affect your own legislation at will. And you can, by careful organization of healing societies, by constant campaign about the terrors of society, by pretense as to your effectiveness, make your capitalist himself, by his own appropriations, finance a large portion of the quiet communist conquest of the nation. By psychopolitics create chaos, leave a nation leaderless, kill our enemies, and bring to earth, through communism, the greatest peace man has ever known.
Element in keeping the peace is our military establishment. Our arms must be mighty, ready for instant action, so that no potential aggressor may be tempted to risk his own destruction. Our military organization today bears little relation to that known of any of my predecessors in peacetime, or indeed by the fighting men of World War II or Korea. Until the latest of our world conflicts, the United States had no armaments industry. American makers of plowshares could, with time and as required, make swords as well. But we can no longer risk emergency improvisation of national defense. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions.
A short time ago, the U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the three key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime: Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. Everybody heard those names for years as they built this horribly destructive enterprise. Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror.
And to do this, 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. We annually spend on military security alone more than the net income of all United States corporations. Now this conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry is new in the American experience. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city circles of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.